The brick fell and hit him in the head. The brick fell from above. How is that not a typical falling object case? My name is Fred Aranki, and I'm a partner at the firm. This is a case I handled alongside my partner, Daniel O'Toole. So Mr. Torres-Quito was a construction worker on a job site in Manhattan, and he and his coworkers were accepting a delivery of materials to the street level at the job site. And there were workers from different companies working above him, pretty high up on scaffolds outside the building. One of the workers dropped a brick off of the top of the scaffold by accident, and Mr. Torres-Quito was down below, thankfully wearing a hard hat, and the brick hit him on the head as he was unloading the truck. This was a construction site accident, and it fell under Labor Law Section 240 because it was what's called a falling object. And it's a layperson's word, but it's also a term of art under the labor law, where somebody's working on a job site and an object falls in what's called a gravity-related accident, which is covered by the Labor Law 240. So on the day of the accident, our client Johnny and one of his coworkers were on the ground floor on the street level of the building. There were workers working on scaffolds above him, anywhere from 10 floors to 20 floors above him. Now, on these types of job sites, it's the obligation of the general contractor to make sure that if people are going to be working or just in an area that's below where people are working above, they need to make sure that that area is protected. And the way they do that is to put them far enough away from where the work is going on, or to have what's called netting, like construction netting. They didn't properly do that. They didn't make sure that the people that were working above were doing it in a safe enough manner. They also didn't safe off the area on the street where the deliveries were being accepted by the workers at the job site. And so when the brick fell, it fell onto Johnny, who was standing on the street level, and hit him on his head, on his hard hat. He ended up getting cervical spine injuries, and he ended up with cervical spine surgery. Before the accident, he was a hard worker, supporting his family. He liked to play soccer. He liked to work out. It affected him, and it affected him from a psychological standpoint too. Taking someone who works outside, works with his hands, gets a paycheck every week, to someone who's just sitting home all the time and just going to doctor's appointments, it really gets to someone. So it affected him from a psychological standpoint too, but it also, even though he had the surgery, he still had pain in his neck. He still had problems turning his neck from side to side. So that was something that affected him the entire time the case was going on. We made a motion for summary judgment on this case under Labor Law 240, and the defendants also made a motion. The court actually dismissed our Labor Law 240 claims, the lower court, which was surprising and upsetting to us because we felt like this was a pretty straightforward falling object case. We appealed it, appeal was argued, and we won the appeal. So not only did the court reverse the dismissal of our Labor Law 240 case, it also granted us summary judgment on 240. That made a huge difference in the case. That changed everything. Once that happened, once you have that reversal in hand and you have summary judgment, it made a big difference because an interest starts running, and if the case were to go to trial, it would be a damages-only trial versus a trial where we have to argue who was at fault for the accident. And we went to the appellate division. One of the judges in particular, she was all over it right away, in a good way. Christina Mercado argued the appeal, and I watched it a couple of times. And the judge was very adamant that this was a Labor Law 240 case. She said a brick fell and hit him in the head. The brick fell from above. She said, how is that not a typical falling object case? And the one thing that she honed in on was the fact that Johnny's hard hat was cracked from the brick. We had the hard hat. He saved it, thankfully. And I kept it in my office for years in a box, safe. And when the case was over, when Johnny came to our office for the last time, I offered him his hard hat back. And he said, I want you to keep it because I want you to always remember me. And I said, Johnny, I'm never going to forget you, but I really appreciate it. And I have it, and it's still in my office sitting on the skeleton that's in my office. I'll always have that to remember Johnny by, even though I'm never going to forget him because we developed a relationship like we do with a lot of clients because they're in our lives, we're in each other's lives for a while. This case settled for $3,400,000. It should be enough to set him up for the rest of his life. Thankfully, we had built up such a good relationship with Johnny. Having that trust makes a big difference. I had constant meetings with him. I spoke with him on the phone a lot. I had him in the office a lot. I texted with him on a regular basis. just so he knew that that we were all doing everything that we could to get his case across the finish line. Most people we represent, this is their first case that they've ever had, and hopefully their only case. So it's so important from day one with people to build up that trust, because it pays dividends later on.